Failure is always better than regret. So usually when you hear people talk about regret, either if it's, oh, I regret spending money on a certain item, or I regret eating a certain piece of food, or regret being in a relationship with someone, usually when they're talking about regret, they regret doing something. And in fact, those things that they do, it's usually short term things they did with short term consequences. For example, if I spent $50 on an item that I regret buying because I don't really need it. Right now, at this moment, $50 is a lot of money, but in the long term, it's really not at all. If you think about how much money you're going to be making throughout your lifetime, $50 is really kind of inconsequential in the long run. But right now, it's a lot. Same thing with food. That eating a chocolate cake that's like 1,000 calories, that might be a big regret because that's a lot of calories for one day. But 1,000 calories over a lifetime, not much at all, right? So those regrets usually are in the short term because we see the consequences are very immediate and we see them upcoming. So we're like, oh, now I'm not going to have much money in the future, or I'm going to be fatter in the future, or I wasted time doing something. And that's where the most people's regret comes from. However, as you get older, especially if you talk to old people, their regrets start to change. And their regrets are not what they did, but what they didn't do. As you get old and the end is coming near, and you see it. You see that you have not much time left, or you have an uncertain amount of time left. And that's when you fully kind of appreciate that your time on Earth is limited, that it's a finite resource, and you can't just do everything. That you're no longer just this ball of potential as you were when you're younger. There's really you everything you've done in your life is almost everything that you will do in your life. As these people think, their regrets, they're usually much more about what they didn't do because in the future they don't have a future, that they won't have that time to do something. For example, me, I'm a young guy, so if I miss out on an opportunity, for example, to go on a trip to Europe, for example, like I had an opportunity but I didn't do it, it's not really going to be a big deal in my brain because I have decades of life to live, or I think I do. That's the thing. But I have decades to live that I can eventually do it. But a 6 year old man, who knows when he'll be able to do that? Or if he is alive, like, is he going to be in the condition where he will be able to fully enjoy it? So that's when the regrets change to more things that you didn't do. Especially also as well that you have different time periods of your life, that you're only a kid for so long, you're only a teenager for so long, you're only a young man for so long, a middle-aged man for so long. And in those time periods, you can only do certain things that you can at other eras. For example, as your childhood, you can't spend weeks of summer just playing with friends all summer long because that is really a childhood thing that people don't have the time or resources to be able to afford that kind of lifestyle or have that social group to that to do that with. In your teens, in your 20s, you don't in that time period you're going to have a lot of energy to do all these exciting activities, say like traveling, skydiving, any kind of energy intensive activity. You have that energy that you're not going to have when you get older. And even middle aged man, like you still have that physicality, like to move around that when you're elderly you won't. That you can't walk a mile when you're like 80 years old, possibly. So that's when the regret starts settling in of I had all this time to do these things I wanted, but I never did them. And funny enough, those regrets about what you did do, they don't really matter much anymore because you realize how trivial most things in life are. For example, that that chocolate cake I ate when I was 20 years old that I was fretting out because I'm supposed to lose weight and I just splurge and I'm getting fat. You know, when you're older, you kind of realize that that wasn't worth losing sleep over. That time you had at that moment was much more valuable than to be used on worry and regret at that point in time, and it really didn't matter. Um, so even though you made that mistake, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Another one would be, for example, like a lot of guys, they're afraid to ask out girls, and they in their moment, a young guy like in that moment, they think, oh, what if I get embarrassed? What if she rejects me and it goes terribly? Then I'll feel bad about myself. What if someone makes fun of me? All these kinds of things. And in your mind, that's a legitimate consequences. I'm not denying that at all. However, as time goes on, if some of you guys might see in your own life where those feelings of rejection, the pain goes down and simmers as time goes on. And maybe you start actually being happy you did it because either you gained something from that experience, like you learned something new, or you took the chance that you never took that chance, you never would have known that that could have been your future wife, and you would never known if she was or if she wasn't if you never took that chance. As you get older, you start realizing these mistakes or quote unquote mistakes that you make, they don't really that matter. And quite frankly enough, those mistakes you made, you see the benefit they actually once had, that they taught you a lesson somehow. And I'm all about lessons. And even though it's so much better to get a lesson from, say, listening to someone else, either listening to me, listening to someone else online, through classical literature, your parents, anyone, so much easier to get a lesson that way. Life is the best teacher, but it's an expensive teacher. So sometimes we need to learn some lessons in life and not just on the from someone else. So what I'm trying to say is there's so many older guys and older women who in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they they are constantly in regret of the things they didn't do. Either that's get married, start a family, try to live out their dream in a certain career, travel somewhere, learn an instrument, learn a language, pick up a hobby, make more friends, buy that cool sports car, anything, any kind of goal or dream you have, which I always talk about, the goals and dreams you have that in your mind are non-negotiable. If you never achieve them, you're just going to be an old man, and it's not going to be this constant pain, but it's just going to be that hindrance, that annoyance, the quiet moments, the time you're going to sleep or in the car that you think about what you could have been, what you could have been. And often as not, regret can develop into one of the hardest pains to deal with. Because unlike most pain, as time goes on, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Failure, on the other hand, it gets less and less and less. So, I'm going to use the example again of asking out a girl that, if you go up and ask out a girl and she says no, in that moment, it's going to hurt a lot. That you're going to feel bad about yourself because, oh, this girl just rejected me. I'm embarrassed. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. So it hurts really a lot in that moment. But later on, it's going to be like, you might not feel at all. And quite the contrary, you might feel really proud of yourself that you took that risk and you figured out if it was a yes or no. On the other hand, if you don't do it in that moment, you might feel all right. You're going to feel very comfortable because, like, oh, I'm safe now. I didn't take that risk, so I'm not going to face the consequences of a rejection. But pretty quickly, you'll start feeling maybe bad about yourself or not being up to the task of taking that risk, or start feeling bad because you don't know. It's that question mark, and it can just get worse and worse. That might just be a small thing, but it's also the big things about you've always wanted to, I don't know, start a band or like put out some songs. You want to write your own songs and record them, and you've had multiple opportunities to do it, either with overt opportunities or covert opportunities, and you keep putting it aside, that regret will start eating at you if that's your dream. That's a non-negotiable dream. And as an old man, it'll be fairly often that you hear, little guys say, "Oh, I wish I did this." Oh, and they constantly, not like every half an hour. I mean, like every so often, every few weeks, you may hear them say that. They or some regret you have. And the happiest old men are the ones who lived a full life and did what they want. And now they can sit in retirement and just be completely satisfied and fulfilled that I got everything I want out of my life. I'm just going to enjoy the rest of it, take it easy because I did the hard work. I took the risk. I went through the struggle when I was younger. And now I can relax and relax in peace. Relax in peace that I got everything I wanted. And all that pain of failure, either that's rejection or resentment or just hard work and struggle or trying to achieve something and maybe it didn't work out. It's it was all worth it because I got the answer, and very often I thought the answer was no and it was yes, and I got so much more out of life because of that reason. Think about any I'm going to continue to reuse relationships here. Think about any kind of couple you know. At some point, either one of them or both of them took the risk of making the move and to make this a more than just a friendship or just an acquaintanceship. They took that risk and look what they have now. Happily married or happily people who were happily dating. Or even just look at friendships. Anyone who's in a happy relationship with someone else, any kind of relationship, that is because they took that risk. And a lot of them failed at or got rejected or failed at relationships, but a lot of them look at what paid off. And to be honest, with other goals that the world will be a lot less productive, a lot less prosperous, a lot less, I would say, people will be a lot less satisfied or happy with their life, just the quality of life in general, if people didn't take those risks. If Steve Jobs never decided to start Apple, or Thomas Edison never inventing his version of the light bulb, really anything. And that's because they went through failure, and I bet a lot of those guys that if they have a healthy mind, might have a very they might be resentful, they might be angry, and later in life they might be sad, but a lot of them don't have regrets in those fields that they progressed. And a life full of regrets is not a good one. That's what I would have to say for certain. So, the pain of that discipline and the pain of struggle is never as bad as the pain of regret. And personally, me, I tried to live my life without regrets. All right, so I wanted to say thank you for watching, and hopefully I help convince you that oftentimes failure is not as bad as regret. All right, so thanks for watching.